think it's a great subject for the Skyscraper Museum, actually, because it's about city building and about how skyscrapers and high-rises fit into making a neighborhood. And unlike the usual fare, and the usual fare is great for the Skyscraper Museum, but it's really focusing on iconic towers, this is all about how the parts and pieces fit together. And if this is the site in red, obviously, and the East River, and if you just look across the river to the Manhattan side, I think it's a real lesson in how not to develop a sustainable neighborhood and a waterfront neighborhood. I mean, we start with the waterfront. There's greenery, that's good. There's public space, but then it's cut off by the highway. This is obviously the Lower East Side and Tompkins Square Park, and these super blocks of affordable housing that are really isolated from the rest of the community. So it does a bunch of things. It cut off the neighborhood from the water. It doesn't use the resource. It isolates the various income levels, and it really doesn't make for a great neighborhood. Across the river, the opportunity here was just, as Sean said, these great resource of industrial buildings. So if we can go to the next slide. The first sketch that we did, we were involved, my partner Mark Strauss was involved with working with the neighborhood groups and trying to understand what their vision for the project was, or for the rezoning was. And it really, I think, captured the spirit of what ultimately happened, which is a graining of the sites to the water, a mix of high rises and low rises, and of course green space that really engages with the waterfront. Go to the next slide. And this was already shown, but it really is out the city plan as Sean discussed in depth. So I'll keep going with our side at the end. So how do we really put the floor area and how do we craft a plan on the site? As Ron said, it was a large site. It's sort of a block and a third in its north-south direction, very long in its east-west direction. And our concept was really to take the market rate housing as much as possible in towers that maximize views and that created a space that really, much like the three towers at the NYU housing, the IMPay NYU housing, but then unlike the NYU housing, it was buffered and locked into the neighborhood through low-rise development, and if you go to the next slide, really retail activation. This is a ground floor plan. So you see the center court, the three entrances to the market rate housing, the sort of liner of retail and townhouses and loft units that really face the public way and the upland connections and the roads that bring you to the waterfront. And then, of course, there's a great waterfront development and pier reclamation as part of the esplanade. If you go to the next slide, working with Donna Walcavage, the landscape architect, she really crafted a great plan along the guidelines for all of the esplanade here, upland connections and so forth that really will activate and bind together all these various different projects. So from an architectural and massing point of view, we really use what I call the Vancouver strategy, which is townhouses and towers. So you basically make as low-rise pieces as possible, 3 to 6 story townhouses and the affordable units, and then concentrate the market rate buildings and towers, and to sort of avoid the mid-rise buildings. And this basically creates street wall continuity, it creates eyes on the street, it creates retail continuity, but at the same time, it puts people up in the air where they want to be. Next. And so this is a view. Sorry, Jeff, I didn't fill out exactly your building is, but this is a view, aerial view. Of course, ours are all built out of this one, but of the three towers, the center court, the townhouses, and the affordable component, the inclusionary component, really locking into the rest of the neighborhood. I'll talk about that in a moment. Next slide. So how do you take 30 and 40 story towers, and how do you take low-rise buildings, and how do you integrate that into a context? And it's really a puzzle, and really what we landed on is really there are two contexts here that are operating. One is the local Williamsburg context, which these images show. It's a sort of great, gritty industrial neighborhood. There's all sorts of a variety of buildings, great street life, a real eclecticism. So one part of clearly we had to respond to that. And if you go to the next slide, there's also more macro context of the waterfront that's emerging, whether it's the Perry Street projects, across the river in that other state, New Jersey, on the Hoboken waterfront. This is the W Hotel further up on the Queens waterfront. There's this sort of emerging waterfront architecture of these glassy towers that really respond to their position on the waterfront. So those were the two operative contexts we were working with. Next. So really you see here the two together, the towers on the water, which were much more glassy, much more about being on a waterfront environment, and then something that was much more masonry and much more recall of the lower scale in the left in this slide. Next. So here it is from a few weeks ago. We're standing on a pier that was reconstructed as part of the project, looking east. This is the waterfront architectural expression. This is the first tower going up, and then the townhouses on the right and the inclusionary building. You can just see the end here. And then if you go to the next slide, this is what it looks like from the inside. Real connection to the river traffic, to the bridges. That's really the appeal of living on the waterfront. And if you go to the next slide, and then that was further reinforced by, of course, balconies and stretching out into the landscape with terraces and so forth. So you really get this connection between inside and outside. Next. And then if you then fold that into the part that locks back to the Williamsburg context, this is the frontispiece to the project that lines Kent Avenue, the 6-story inclusionary housing piece with retail at the bottom, and the two work, I think, very well together in juxtaposition. Next. And then it all sort of comes together at the entrances of the building. The tower is lifted up so you can get into it. It's more it's lighter on its feet, and then it's bracketed and sort of put in the setting of more masonry townhouses. Next. And this was a slide from a few weeks ago where you start to see the pieces come together. The eyes on the street, the sort of street wall continuity of the townhouses, of the housing, of the retail, and then the more outwardly looking all glass towers. Just the next slide quickly, and then a bit about how it's all crafted together. I mean, it's the challenges refer to the mix of uses, and so forth. Here you see a plan of the first phase, which those photographs came from, and really you have a sort of the lower scale 6-story wing inclusionary piece, which is block and plank construction and very rigorously done. Then you have the tower, which is more of a concrete frame construction with glass curtain wall, and they're all surrounding this green roof that sits on a steel podium. If you go to the next slide. It really shows how all the pieces lock together. One of the, I think, urbanistically very important things about the zoning was parking was required, but it had to be shielded from the street. So it's all the parking is inboard. There's always a liner of habitable space, whether it's retail or in this case the housing. This is the low-rise housing, and that's the tower. Next. And then finally here it is at night, and it all comes together with the low-rise piece, the active streets coming towards the waterfront, the 3 towers, and especially the last one really sitting on that promontory that was all part of the fill from the last owner, and of course the pier jutting out into the water. So that's a whirlwind of the project.